To the witnesses for all of the difficulties with votes, but it is what it is, and we're in the season that we're in. Before I start, I'm going to invite, there has been some conversation about Mr. Dubé's motion. I'm going to allocate the princely amount of time of 1 minute to see whether there's an appetite to deal with Mr. Dubé's motion. The first question I have is, and I shouldn't even ask this, I should say, we're going to have this in open as opposed to in camera. Otherwise, we'll just waste more time. So, Mr. Dubé, do you want to move your motion and we'll see whether we can get this done in 1 minute.
Yeah, well, I should hopefully need less than that. I've already presented it, explained why it's on the record, and so I'm happy to move to the vote.
And Ms. Oda.
I'd just like to state that I'm supportive of the motion. However, I do feel that the time frame is very loose. It goes, allows up until June 21st. I do think that there is some urgency to the matter because there are a lot of people that feel uncomfortable about the way the report was put out initially in December. And so I would urge that we perhaps state that it should be done at the minister's earliest convenience. So just like a friendly amendment to that, not to give such a lengthy deadline, and that we do it as soon as possible.
Mr. Dubé.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was understanding we have a busy committee. I would just perhaps amend it to say at the minister's earliest convenience and no later than the date that's in the motion, just so that we don't say that the earliest convenience is when some of us come back. So.
I think that's a good amendment, at his earliest convenience, but no later than.
Okay, are we on consensus on that? Properly, I should have Ms. Aho to move an amendment, and then we vote on the amendment. So,
okay.
Do you want to move your amendment, or
Yes.
sub-amendment at least?
Yes, my sub-amendment is that after the words, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness to appear at his earliest convenience, but no later than Friday, June 21st, 2019,
and the rest is
of
the
it's
same.
the same.
Okay. So the vote's on the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? So then the vote is on the motion as amended. Those in favor of the motion as amended? Those opposed? Excellent. Thank you very much. So now we'll turn to our witnesses. Notice the extraordinary level of cooperation among colleagues on the Public Safety Committee. Unfortunately, not replicated anywhere else. Our first witness is Ms. Terry O'Brien from the Interact Corporation, and our second witness is Mr. Farabee and Mr. Kyle from Payments Canada. I thank you for your patience, and I'm going to ask you for your opening statements and point out to colleagues that we are supposed to be again voting at 5:30. I assume that's when the bells go? Yes, no?
Maybe bells at 5.
Maybe bells at 5. Okay, let's at least get the statements done and then we'll... Okay, well, we started the meeting, thank goodness for that. So, do I have unanimous consent to proceed until we can no longer proceed? Okay. Which is probably 20 minutes? Because it's half-hour bells, aren't they?
You can turn the timer back on there, no?
Yeah, okay, we can get that going. Anyways, so please proceed. I again apologize for these procedures, but they are what they are. So, Ms. O'Brien.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Terry O'Brien, and I lead the risk management practice at Interact Corp. For my opening remarks today, my goal is to provide insights and recommendations on cybersecurity from our unique position in the financial services landscape. Many of you know Interact already. Like millions of Canadians each day, you use our products and services to withdraw money, pay and transfer funds with security and convenience. What you may not know is that Interact is 100% Canadian owned and operated. What sets us apart is not only our Canadian roots, but the trust we have established with Canadians over our 35-year history. Last year, Canadians made 6.6 billion transactions, moving over $415 billion in value across our suite of products, including Interac Debit and Interac eTransfer. Interac has been in the business of facilitating real-time payments between Canadians for decades, including our Interac eTransfer product, which has been facilitating real-time payments since 2002. And of course, this includes real-time 24/7 fraud detection. With real-time payments comes the need for real-time security, prevention, and detection capabilities, which we've built up over our history. Our real-time cyber and fraud capabilities help Canadians digitally transact with confidence across a variety of devices and platforms, including mobile devices. And at the same time, we adhere to our core values that have been central to our history, including corporate responsibility, safety, and soundness. Security is a core element of everything we do, whether it's combating fraud across our network or keeping personal financial information of Canadians private. Therefore, cybersecurity is something we think about a lot. And as our economy and society has become increasingly digital, it is no secret that the pace of cybercrime has accelerated. As I'm sure you've heard some testimony and as we've read and seen in reports, around the world it's never been easier for people to access cybercrime goods and services. Fraud as a service and cybercrime as a service websites currently sell everything from credit card numbers to social media account credentials to denial of service attacks. All of that is available with a single click and for several $100s. In that regard, Interac was very pleased to see the government establish the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity last year and make new investments in cybersecurity in the most recent budget. We also support the creation of the centralized cybercrime unit under the RCMP. Interac plays a unique position at the center of the Canadian financial services landscape. We operate as a central payments and digital information exchange to facilitate the interoperability of payments and related information between our Canadian banks, credit unions, Caisse Populaire, payment processors, businesses, and Canadian consumers. And because of this, we are in a unique position where we can detect cybercrime, including fraud and money laundering, as it moves throughout our system and between those institutions. This is a unique role that Interac plays at the center of the ecosystem, whereas each financial institution can only detect fraud and money laundering within their own customer accounts. Interac can see the criminal activity across institutions. In order to pick up on these patterns of criminal activity, we employ sophisticated tools that utilize machine learning and predictive behavioral modeling. When our systems detect high risk or suspected fraudulent activity, actions are immediately taken, including suspending or blocking the transactions. We also communicate directly with institutions across the financial system. We collaborate and share information to strengthen our collective resilience and security in the Canadian economy. A practical example of this for the committee is when we detect that financial criminals are utilizing many different accounts to target a specific bank, union, or Caisse Populaire. In these circumstances, we alert the institution that is being targeted, while simultaneously working to block the activity and secure vulnerabilities at the various sending institutions. And because cybercrime doesn't have business hours, neither do we. Our detection and prevention systems and staff operate 24/7, enabling us to counter cybercrime in near real time. We are constantly evolving our approach in order to keep Canadians safe when transacting over our networks. In 2018, our fraud risk mitigation practices prevented over $100 million in fraud losses, and we had over 4,300 malicious websites taken down. We also work together today with the RCMP and local law enforcement to support and assist in their investigations of fraud and related criminal activity. Protecting Canadians' financial information amidst the changing payments landscape is a top priority for Interac. Since the advent of mobile wallets, payments are now made through smartphones and other devices, and as mobile payments are growing in popularity among Canadian consumers and businesses every day. In order to secure the payments made via the Interac Debit network on mobile devices, Interac became one of the first domestic debit networks globally to establish its own token service provider, or TSP. Our TSP ensures the personal identifiable information, including account numbers, are replaced with randomized information, or tokens, that are of no use to hackers or criminal activity. Expanding on the use of tokenization is one way that we can enhance cybersecurity for the benefit of Canadians. Collaboration and coordination amongst private and public entities is also pivotal to addressing the volume of cyber threats that exist today. We see 3 specific areas of focus here that can greatly benefit Canadians. The first is information sharing with the new cybercrime unit in the RCMP. The second is a more targeted approach to detecting cyber criminals. And the third is ongoing public education and awareness. Interact believes there is an opportunity to reduce impediments that currently exist in order to enable more open sharing of known cyber threats between Interact and the government through secure and trusted channels. This should include looking at legislative changes as well as safe harbor provisions to open up communication channels and address concerns around enforcement actions. Secondly, when it comes to detecting cyber threats, we see benefits in utilizing a more targeted approach as a key point of emphasis. The way threats are detected today is akin to a scattershot in that all transactions must be scanned and analyzed with equal importance. A more efficient model would be one which focuses on lists of known cybercriminals and cyber threats and those vectors and behaviors, utilizing information from government, law enforcement, as well as financial institutions and Interact. Interact could play a pivotal role here given our ability to detect criminal activity across our network and our connection to almost 300 financial institutions. Interact at the center of the ecosystem today could represent a secure information exchange with the RCMP in future to allow both organizations to take a targeted approach in detecting and preventing crime rather than scanning all transactions. We believe government can and should play a leadership role here by establishing and maintaining clear processes and lines of accountability. Finally, at Interact, we recognize there is a need to provide ongoing public information and education about cyber threats and security best practices to support an increased knowledge of the current risks and how to keep Canadians safe. We regularly conduct proactive campaigns designed to educate and inform. We also participate in forums such as the Competition Bureau's Public Education Working Group to share our insights and results. We also collaborate actively with the RCMP and local law enforcement. We look forward to further collaboration with the government on information sharing, targeted detection, and public education in future. To conclude, I would like to emphasize Interact's commitment to cybersecurity and our willingness to work together with government as we do today. We support recent initiatives and investments made by the federal government and believe that continued education and discussions like these can advance industry-wide solutions to help keep Canadians safe from cybercrime. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Farabee, and Mr. Kyle.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Justin Farabee.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Farabee. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Payments Canada.
Security is Payments Canada's highest priority in all that we do. It commands focus, resources, and investment above all other needs. This means that we design, review, modify, update, and operate our systems as we monitor risks. We see security as a prerequisite for innovation in the payment space. We remain in a constant state of vigilance and respond decisively as required to ensure we make risk appropriately, or we manage risk appropriately, and that we remain secure. Over the next few minutes, I'll share who we are and what we do, our collaborative approach to cybersecurity, and our recommendations for reducing the risk in the financial sector. Payments Canada operates Canada's national clearing and settlement systems. While Payments Canada is a little-known entity to most Canadians, it plays an essential role in the economy and in the day-to-day operations of financial institutions and businesses across the country. Payments Canada's systems ensure that payments between financial institutions, the aggregation of all payments made in the economy, are safely and securely completed each and every day. The value transferred is over $50 trillion annually. We are guided by our mandate and the public policy objectives of safety, security, and efficiency of the Canadian clearing and settlement systems. In consultation with members and stakeholders, we also maintain a framework of rules and standards that mitigate risk, facilitate the exchange of payments, and the deployment of emerging payment products and services. Given that cyber threats evolve rapidly, Payments Canada is continually raising its defenses. We have a cyber security action plan based on secure design principles and industry standards. The plan ensures we are constantly watching for and closing gaps to maintain the resiliency of our operations. Payments Canada operates within a network of financial institutions, regulators, and other financial market infrastructures. We are held to the highest global security standards, including the Bank of International Settlements guidance on cyber resiliency for financial market infrastructures, the SWIFT Customer Security Program, and the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. We also work closely with the Bank of Canada to ensure that we meet their requirements for mitigating cyber threats through internal and external assessments. Outside of these requirements, we establish rules and standards around the security of payment items and connectivity of systems to which our members must adhere. From a wider collaborative industry perspective, we work very closely with partners in the financial sector through cybersecurity industry groups such as the Canadian Financial Services Cybersecurity Governance Council, the Canadian Bankers Association Cyber Security Specialist Group, and the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. We also participate in and lead industry exercises for business continuity and cyber resilience, and share intelligence with partner agencies and organizations in the cyber community. These connections include the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, Public Safety Critical Infrastructure Protection Branch, the RCMP's National Critical Infrastructure Team, and the Canadian Cyber Threat Exchange. Further to these collaborations, we are actively engaged in the international cyber risk community with our partners at the Bank of Canada. Through all of these activities, we continually rank and benchmark ourselves internationally, and we are consistently in the top 1% of the global industry for safety and security. Working closely with our financial institution members, the Bank of Canada and Department of Finance, we are currently undertaking a major program to modernize Canada's payment systems to meet the growing demand for secure and innovative new payments products. Modernization will result in new payment infrastructure designed to strengthen the payment system. Through our diligence and movement toward modern payment systems, we have identified gaps that exist outside our realm, which this study may be able to influence. There is a clear need for public-private coordination in responding to attacks against critical infrastructure, and with that, a single, clear point of contact in the public sector. These improvements will help us better share information in a protected fashion and will help us manage and prevent future attacks. The release of the National Cybersecurity Strategy in 2018 and the recent developments with the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity will help in this area. At the same time, the recovery of systemic cyber systems must be prioritized in the event of a widespread disruption. Policy that extends cybersecurity requirements to the supply chain of critical systems will help to improve resiliency of dependent components to the national infrastructure and the financial system as a whole. Investments in policies in cybersecurity can also support digital supply chain risk. The modern supply chain often includes hundreds or thousands of software components that are embedded in critical systems sourced from companies and communities all around the world. It is a significant task to track and inventory all of the ingredients of a system and make sure that those ingredients remain safe. In the food safety world, we have labeling standards that inform customers about product ingredients and nutritional facts, but in the software world, we have no labeling standard to help consumers understand what components and what risks might exist within the software. Policy to support digital supply chain risk is necessary, and system labeling of software components should be studied for its benefits to the economy. We also feel strongly that more could be done to address the cyber security skills shortage. There is already a gap in capable people, and given the increase in severity of threats, there is a need for policies and strategies to develop, attract, and retain skilled workers. This will ensure Canadian companies are able to safely grow and innovate as they expand their use of digital technologies. And finally, we see a need to equip Canadians with the knowledge and awareness of good cyber hygiene to protect their personal and financial information online. For instance, right now, millions of Canadians are seeking out technologies and financial applications that mimic the services of open banking. In seeking out such services, they aggregate account information across multiple platforms and thereby expose themselves to cyber threats. Payments Canada was pleased to see several of these issues and commitments to address them were included in the 2019 federal budget. But we know that cyber threats are not going away. In fact, they are evolving just as quickly, if not faster, than digitization and modernization across all industries. We must work together to build resiliency in the face of these threats in a way that ensures that we do not hinder the pace of innovation. While every organization has a responsibility to protect themselves from cyber attacks, Also, doing so as a collective or network is much more effective. Cybersecurity is an issue that affects the Canadian economy and our national security as a whole. Payments Canada is eager to contribute and support a network defense strategy. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have how many minutes left there? 12 minutes? So if we ran this down to 5 minutes before the vote, that would give you 4 minutes, and that would be about it. I would seek your input as to whether we could come back and spend an hour with these folks, if you folks are available. Or can we do that?
I won't be here.
Oh, 2 hours then.
I won't be here.
Yeah.
John, do we do it on autopilot?
I have
Motion's accepted.
constituents here that I've
sure.
already committed to, so.
Okay, well, there's no votes, no motions. That's agreed. And we come back for an hour. I just feel like we're abusing these folks' time, and so we will be back here about quarter after. Probably about 5:30. Yeah. Okay. So with that, Michelle, who's Ms. Sahoda, 4 minutes, and Monsieur Palus, 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'd first like to, Ms. O'Brien, you had spoken about malicious websites. How often are you seeing these malicious websites go up? How much of your capacity gets used up by taking down these malicious sites? And if you can explain a little bit as to, the awareness that you are trying to raise for consumers so that they're not duped.
Yes, absolutely. Last year, Interac experienced 4,300 of these phishing websites that we actively worked with a leader in the industry, a partner of ours, to take them down. It's a similar partner that works with many financial institutions. I would say the larger financial institutions experience many more times of that many phishing incidents or fraudulent websites that are put up. The websites are intended to collect personal identifiable information or login credentials or other such means of identity of Canadian consumers so that they can overtake their banking accounts or other payment processing to extrapolate the money from their accounts. So that's the intention of the websites. They are getting more sophisticated, we are finding, in more recent years, and I think folks would agree they're getting better at stealing logos and branding and making it look like a legitimate website. We do participate heavily in public education in this regard, so it's very important to know that your financial institution isn't going to send you links and emails to click through to these malicious websites. There are ways that we educate the public that they can double check that they are in fact on their own financial institution's website and or Interac's website and not on a spoofed website.
Spoke also a little bit about mobile wallets, and Interac for a while now has been operating on the TAP system. Has this led to an increase in fraudulent incidences, and are we foregoing safety for the sake of convenience? If you could shed some light on that.
Certainly. I would say no, actually. The mobile technology is more secure and it is akin to the TAP technology. So it uses the EMV card technology. It's quite a layered security. I also mentioned around the tokenization. So what is actually stored on the phones is a token. It's not the actual card number and leverages the TAP technology that is quite secure. So we have almost eliminated fraud in the Interac debit business. A lot of that has to do with chip and pin. The remaining residual, which is really at 1 basis point, it's as low as it could possibly be, are stemming from exploits in the US where there's still terminals with a mag stripe. But effectively in Canada, that technology is extremely secure.
Is there any? We heard a little bit about the token service provider from MasterCard when they were here. I had never heard about it before. It seems that, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that isn't the system used consistently. Why is Interac not switching over to using the token system completely so that information, personal information, is eliminated?
So Interac has developed and deployed our own token service provider. So it's correct in that we are not using any other provider, whether it's a MasterCard or otherwise, that we have our own token service provider. We do deploy our own technology because it is so secure and because we can manage and maintain the security around it.
Ms. Sahota, Mr. Palus, 4 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Do you have the interpretation? Yes. Thank you for being here today, and sorry about everything going on with the votes. With Interac, clients have 30 days to accept funds that I've transferred to them, right? I send money from my bank account, but where are the funds held in the interim while they've been taken out of my account, but the other person hasn't received them yet?
I think the question is directed towards our Interac e-transfer product. Our Interac e-transfer product has several different options. Auto deposit is an immediate real-time transaction. The one that you've described is called our question and answer type transaction. That's wherein the recipient would like a security question answered to deposit the e-transfer transaction. In that case, a person may not be on their email on a daily basis. They are given 30 days to accept the transfer. What happens, however, is the sending person who's sending the transaction, the money is taken from their account. It's a good funds model, so the funds are available. It's held by the sending financial institution in a suspense account, and then once the security question is answered, the funds are released. So at all times, they are secured.
Donc l'argent demeure, exemple.
So the money, let's say I'm with RBC, that the money doesn't go to Interac, the money remains in an RBC account, is that right? Because often I wonder when once the transfer is gone, there's no more contact anymore until the other person accepts the transfer. But if the person doesn't receive it, people are always worried, where's the money? So now I know you're telling me the emitting bank has the funds, holds the funds. If the money that's sent, I'm just trying to see because we're trying to understand these systems better and it's quite technical, but virtually speaking, can someone else intercept the transfer? And if so, what can be done? Can Interac intercept a transfer or could a bad actor intercept a transfer?
The answer is no, that it's a highly secure closed loop private network. And so while Interac operates the infrastructure, Interac also has the operating regulations and governance through which the transactions transfer from each financial institution. What we're facilitating is the financial institution that wants to employ the question and answer or Q&A type service. At no time, though, is the transaction or could it be intercepted in transit. It is securely held at one financial institution, and then once released, the payment across the Interac infrastructure is securely facilitated into the receiving institution.
Donc vous dites que le chemin.
So you're telling me that the route taken by the transfer is completely secure. So it's not possible for anyone to intercept it.
It's a fully secured closed loop private network that we have among the almost 300 financial institutions, credit unions, Caisse Populaires across Canada.
Okay. Vous avez parlé un peu de...
You talked about the government. What legislation should be changed to be more effective for you? Because not all legislation is effective right now. What should be improved and how?
Question. Thank you very much. So we do actively work with the RCMP and law enforcement today on the exchange of some information, although often requires a production order. What we would suggest is that there are certain privacy and other safe harbor legislations that could be opened up that would allow a much more targeted approach between the trusted channels that we have today, where we could effectively focus and manage the cybercrime in a much more targeted way. We find our communications today are quite effective, but they are on specific and constrained in many ways. We think there are definitely legislative options that would allow for more open sharing of that information that would benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Palus. With that, I'm going to suspend We'll resume as soon as possible for another hour. There'll be no motions and no anything else. Again, I thank you for your patience. on. I see quorum. And Mr. Motts, you've never been more popular in your entire life. So we're gonna go. 4 minutes, and then we'll go just 5-minute rounds. Mr. Dubé would normally be up next, but I don't see Mr. Dubé, so I'm going to go to Mr. Picard, and then when Mr. Dubé arrives, I'll go back to Mr. Dubé. So again, thank you for your patience, Mr. Picard.
Thank you.
4 minutes.
Mr. Bryan, you talk about the cybercrime and fraud. What is the nature of the fraud you detected on your system and on which you reacted in the past?
So the fraud is constantly changing, and I would share that it also moves around based on vulnerabilities at the different financial institutions. The most common fraud that we see is what we call account takeover fraud, wherein, to the earlier example, we were speaking about some of the phishing exams, a person's credentials or personal identifiable information that allows criminals to overtake their bank account, and then they start a systemic practice of draining the funds from that bank account to different, sometimes receiving institutions, and pulling the money out of the financial system. And so as Interac, we are in a unique position where we can see that fraud cross institutions, across our network into different financial institutions on the receiving end. And what we've developed is a fraud detection system that patterns that behavior and is able to detect it and then either block the transactions or hold them for further review.
So when you block a transaction, that means that someone somewhere has the information of the cardholder. And by having that, they may have then access to their bank account and therefore start digging more than just the money, but personal information that can be used for identity theft and so on and so on. So your action may block a transaction, but part of the damage is done already, and we don't have any control over what kind of information has been stolen yet at this point.
Not always, not to really outline all of the behavioral models, but I will say when a transaction actually gets blocked, noting that 99.9% of transactions flow through, but when one does actually get blocked, and that's just indicative of our volume, but it is a case of wherein it's a known fraudulent transaction. There are certain vectors and information that we have wherein certain transactions are known, and then that is usually known through information sharing that we actively participate in between Interac and the financial institutions, both sending and receiving. And so it's that reciprocal sharing of information, and sometimes that happens with the RCMP and law enforcement as well. That sharing of information is really critical to allowing us to block known fraudulent transactions. In those cases of the blocks, the customers are not impacted.
We're still stuck with 4-digit PIN that provides maybe 10,000 combination. Nowadays, that's sufficient?
Say yes, the PIN has been the chip and PIN, both the chip technology with the EMV layered security and the PIN that is only known to the user has been very effective. We've almost eradicated fraud on the Interac debit. It's well below 1 basis point of fraud. And as I mentioned earlier, it's just the remaining MagStripe terminals in the US. I think it's also effective because of public education. There's been a lot of public education that you don't share your PIN. And, even in widestream media and television shows, they've talked about how spouses don't even share PINs sometimes with each other. But it's been a very effective public education to keep your PINs secure and secret.
When you make a transaction at a store somehow, you said that you have a private network between banks. But when I buy something from the store, do I make my transaction through a totally private, closed network, or somewhere I have to go on the web or somewhere in order to make that so I'm totally secure, if it's not the case?
You are totally secure. So the PIN pads that you make your transaction on, those are all issued by acquirers and payment processors, and they are part of the closed loop network. So every point in the network is secured.
How about,
Thank you, Mr. Ricard.
It doesn't go across an open internet.
I know you're on a roll there.
I know. Thank you.
They're good questions. Thank you.
Mr. Canning, welcome to the committee. I see you're not Mr. Dubé.
No. Last time I checked.
Yeah. We had held 4 minutes for Mr. Dubé as the next questioner, but you may want to catch your breath and we can come back to you.
To catch my breath and figure out
what this
What
is all
exactly we're
about.
talking
Yes.
about, so.
Okay, well, we're trying to figure out the same thing. So, Mr. Mott's 5 minutes.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you, both your organizations, for being here today. I'll start with you, Ms. O'Brien. Canadians wonder, I guess, and hopefully I know the answer to this, but you can shed some light for us. Are Interact e-transfers traceable?
Could you expand on the question? Traceable in what regard?
Well, if we're talking about cybersecurity today, so if we have an issue with an e-transfer, is that e-transfer, if it was to a bad actor, a traceable transaction?
So I will share that a part of my testimony today was about encouraging open collaboration and more information sharing and safe harbor provisions with the RCMP. The transactions are traceable. However, in today's environment, if the RCMP is looking at a bad actor, as you suggest, they will keep certain information around that bad actor secret. They will sometimes issue a production order, in which case we will, as we are required by law, share the information that we have as required by law, and then they will continue their investigation into that bad actor. We have some information that is shared between ourselves at Interact and the financial institutions and law enforcement, wherein we can have indicators that inform our behavioral models. But how the RCMP does their tracing of bad actors is shared to us as they are able to do so.
Thank you for that. On your opening remarks, you spoke about having a sharing system and a proactive sharing system, I think is what you called it. So can you describe for us, in an ideal world, what would be the ideal sharing between your organization or even between the industry in general and law enforcement to protect consumers? What would that look like?
Sure, I'm happy to crystal ball some great ideas in that space. We would absolutely love, there are the cybercrime unit, particularly in government and RCMP, as well as law enforcement. We'll regularly monitor some of the online or dark web or deep web marketplaces. Those marketplaces come up and go down quite frequently as they are trying to hide, some of the marketplaces and some of the identifiable features of them. In an open sharing environment, we would know that very quickly, and then therefore we would have an ability, as to your earlier question, we'd be able to trace bad actors as they come up in these online marketplaces in a closer to real-time fashion. If that information was openly shared with us, we could do a lot more to block or monitor potentially fraudulent transactions.
So Payments Canada, would you care to weigh in on that question? In an ideal world, what do you see as being a vehicle with which, or a way in which we can share information between the financial institutions, financial industry, and law enforcement to protect consumers better than we do now?
I'll have our CISO, Martin Kyle, respond to that because we're active in that.
So there are many sharing organizations already in place and groups. In our comments, we talked a little bit about a information sharing group with the Canadian Bankers Association, for example. We talked about information sharing with a nonprofit who I believe was a witness, who was represented here by a witness, the Canadian Cyber Threat Exchange. We have information sharing with the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity and with the RCMP. All of these various sharing groups allow us to get more information about existing threats and how to detect those threats on our systems, and then allow us to respond to those threats.
Okay, so you said in your opening that you guys Payments Canada transfers about over $200 billion daily through your various networks. So if that's the case, so how do you keep those large sums of money safe during your transfers? How does that look like?
So our as you know, our number one priority is the security of those transfers. And we enable the safety of our systems by what we in the trade call reducing our attack surface. So we have a very small, close-knit group of members whom we support that that we allow into that network, and that network is very segregated from other networks, and that small attack surface allows us to pay very close attention to what happens on it in identifying threats, monitoring the activities, and responding to the things that occur there.
Real time.
Thank you, Mr.
In real
Motz.
time.
I don't know, Mr. Canning, if you caught your breath, or should I go to Mr. DeBruzen?
I'll wing it here.
You wing it. Okay, there we
See
are.
how
4
we-
minutes.
We go, okay. Well, thank you, and as you understand, it's a bit of a surprise for me to be here, so I just got off a plane and voted, and then they took me down here, and so I have unfortunately not been able to hear your testimony, and I have no idea what's been going on before in this study either. So I'm going to ask just a question that pops to my mind about payments, and you may have covered this, and my apologies if that's the case, and that's with chip cards. Canada was an early adopter, at least compared to the United States, and I'm just wondering, I guess, two things. One, how does the fact that Canada has widely used chip cards, in Americans not, I'm not sure if that's changing. Is that an issue? And is there an issue between the two countries on the status of security of those systems? And should we be more worried in the United States than we are here, or vice versa?
I would say it's a very good question. We have almost eradicated fraud in Canada on the debit card with chip and PIN. It's a very effective technology and secondary control in that only the person knows the PIN. The EMV technology on the card has been very effective to date. We do have risk in that the U.S. has not adopted EMV technology. There is increasing industry pressure for them to do so. More of their point-of-sale terminals are being enabled. They have offered in some point-of-sale terminals chip and signature, but haven't fully migrated to a chip and PIN environment. It's a good example, though, where a consortium of the industry, together with payments processors in the center of the industry, together with settlements partners as well, can really combat fraud together when coming together on solutions. So I would say the risk to Canadians with continued magstripe in the U.S. is certainly lower, but it does continue.
I mean, where I interact with it it's more the inconvenience of trying to buy gas in the United States, and they demand a swipe or a postal code, which of course Canadian postal codes don't work down there.
Absolutely true. Can you?
There's a way to do it. I can explain it to you.
I don't know. In Texas, they have trouble with it. So, okay. And I was just going to ask you about skimming devices and chips. Is that not an issue at all, or?
It's much less of an issue with the chip and PIN. Skimming devices do still exist, although they have to have cameras to try and capture the PIN. But it's not a very elegant, fraudulent solution because your hand could be in the way, and so the risk is really negligible in Canada. The skimming devices that take the mag stripe, though, continues to be a risk in the U.S. The mag stripe is easily copied.
Okay.
Very good.
That sort of does it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you need any hacking help, Mr. Graham's here to help. Ms. DeBruzen, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. The first thing was just because I was looking at a letter I'd received from someone who lives in my community, and probably maybe more Payments Canada, but I'm not sure it's even properly used. So the question is, we're in that hybrid moment where people still sometimes write paper checks, and now you can deposit them by taking a picture and sending that in. But then that check stays floating around with that person. So you have all this personal information with your signature that you're counting on someone to deal with properly, although they might be just a private individual who doesn't have a way of dealing with it. So the first question is, has this ever come up as an issue that's been raised with you? And if so, any tips for people about that and what they can do to protect their personal information?
I can speak for Payments Canada. At Payments Canada, we're at the infrastructure layer. So we would write the rules around how that works, and we run the systems that do the check imaging and allow and enable the digital image. But all of the security and all of the service that's provided to a consumer would be through their bank. So we would support the bank, so support our members in that, but it's at the policy level of the bank.
I don't know did you have any?
Sure. Just to add, from my many years in banking, the technology has come a long way in the check imaging. It's quite good now. Of course, consumers are encouraged to tear up the check and destroy the check afterwards. However, duplicate check detection has come a long way as well. And I'd say if you ever try and deposit it twice, it won't allow you to do so.
Okay, no, thank you. The other part was I saw in Payments Canada, you talked about labeling within the digital supply chain and how to create proper labeling. Does anybody do any labeling in the world? Do you know of a standard out there?
No. That's in fact that's why we put it.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
Oh, please.
I've been looking at the model. It's quite good. Swift has adopted a model wherein, they publish all of their counterparties, as they call them, not in a credit risk standpoint, but just as a counterparty to the system. They publish all of their security standings, and it's quite a good model that we quite like. And what that allows is each of the participants in the ecosystem, if you're a financial institution or a Caisse Populaire, and then you see a lowered security level, they're not quite at the standards, you can mitigate or you limit your risk to that partnering financial institution. And so they've implemented some really interesting things in the past year.
Is there a government role, knowing that, say, there's one standard out there, somebody who's doing it, what's the government role in that? Is it that government adopt a form of labeling and then require it for our financial institutions, or is it something that we leave to another sector?
Sure, I can respond to that. So the attestation program to which Terry referred has been set up by the SWIFT organization to allow the counterparties to publish their attestations to other counterparties. And if one organization feels like the other counterparty that they're doing business with is too risky because of their attestation, they have the opportunity as a business owner to de-risk themselves or demand certain requirements be met before they continue doing business with that organization.
But that said, I just want to come back to the labeling of ingredients. The attestation is a version of, but it's an early version. There is no precedent for identifying all of the components in a value chain and disclosing that and managing that. So there's multiple parts to this. It's not actually being done anywhere else that we know of.
Just part of what I'm thinking is that from what we've heard, more and more as this is crossing borders, it's not something that lies entirely within Canada as far as how it's being done. I'm trying to figure out which body, which organization is best set up. We can cooperate with it as a Canadian government. We can encourage other international governments to participate, but where should that lie?
Yeah, it's a great question, and SWIFT is a global organization that has started early days in that, and I would absolutely suggest that Interac would be an appropriate place as well. We currently run our operating regulations and minimum standards, whether they're security standards or participant standards today, for all of the FIs in our ecosystem, and we have a very robust governance policy and operating regulations in market today, and so we're looking at how we can enhance those in market regulations every day. And the participants eagerly participate in the marketplace and adhere to those regulations because what it gets them is reciprocity of payments and access to the ecosystem.
Thank you, Ms. DeBruze and Mr. Motts. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I'm sure you've heard and read about is that Canada is dealing with whether to accept Huawei as part of our critical infrastructure moving forward. And with 5G on the horizon, the question I have for both of your organizations is, are your platforms prepared to use servers that are built in whole or in part by foreign entities who are likely subject to extrajudicial directions from a foreign government?
I can, of course, only answer for Interact, but I can firmly share that we are not. We are not prepared to allow data or outside of our Canadian Constitution and Canadian roots. Our incorporation, which we became a corporation about a year ago, is quite strongly grounded in Canada. All of our data is to reside in Canada. We are to also use Canadian vendors and Canadian suppliers in any of the delivery of our services, but we build our own technologies. And so to your question about foreign service providers, we are quite anchored in our Canadian roots.
So before I get Payment Canada to respond to the question I asked previously, I just want to follow up with your comments. So if you don't have a server from someone like this, but what happens if the infrastructure with which you transfer your data on has the ability to have switches that can be hacked by a foreign entity? How does that play into your security programs?
So all of our infrastructure and data is resident in Canada and is owned and operated by Interact. To your question about a foreign entity as a hacker, our experience is that most hackers are foreign entities. You know, there are not a lot of domestic Canadian hackers that we've seen.
Talking about the access to the information through the back door, that they're not hacking the system. Like if we're talking certain foreign actors who because of the technology that's in place, potentially could intercept communication that happens on a daily basis, and we don't even know it's being siphoned off.
Well, I just would share that we do vulnerability scan controls and have intensive security scans and only use Canadian networks, Canadian telecom providers, and have Canadian data centers in multiple provinces, and that we only run our transactions through our Canadian data centers. So I don't anticipate that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Payment Canada, what your response to the first question?
Well, as you can appreciate, we wouldn't discuss specific capabilities or principles or how we manage our infrastructure. And what you're raising is a very acute thing we're aware of and are concerned about. And part of the motivation for the supply chain ingredients tracking is to know that, because we would have providers of a service who would have technology and they may not know exactly where it's all come from. So we wouldn't know. So we have to imagine that it is not safe or secure, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. And we are aware of these risks. But without that kind of knowledge, even if they were to attest to say that were true, it might not be true. And we can't afford to take those risks. So we plan as if it's not, and we try to make it so.
So I guess a previous witness identified here at committee some time ago, and I asked this the other week, they called Canadians innocent and I thought it was a very polite way of saying that we don't have a clue about our own cybersecurity, quite frankly, right? And so from both of your perspectives, what needs to change in Canada to get the consumer to get it, to be more vigilant in their own cybersecurity and thus their own privacy? And I mean, and what role do us as legislators have to make sure that we encourage them along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I would share that while I'm not privy to the comment, the innocent comment seems to be more directed at general public knowledge. I would say our resiliency in Canada, particularly with the financial institutions, is quite strong on a global scale. But to your question about Canadian consumers, I would agree. I think public education is immensely important. I think that, certainly this time of year, the level of CRA scams that come out, both from phone calls people receive and emails that people receive, and I'm sure all of you are well versed in that Canadians do get pulled into those scams, that they don't have enough education or awareness to understand when they should hang up the phone or delete the email, and also to up their system security on their home computers and how really important that is.
Thank you, Mr. Motz. Mr. Graham, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. I hope that's enough. Mr. Canning, just to tell you how the things work we talked about earlier, your postal code in your constituency office is V2A5B7, right? So if you're trying to use your postal code, you'd have the numbers from that, so the 2, the 5, and the 7, plus 00. So in the US, your postal code for the purpose of your card, 25700. So now you know how it works.
Okay.
All right.
Next time I'm in Texas, I'll remember that.
Have a safe trip. And keep in mind that your postal code is public record, so everybody knows how it works now. So there you go.
Might be a fraud, but that's another
To come back to the matter at hand, we're talking about foreign-built devices. One thing I'm curious about is when, and this applies to both of you, both organizations, when you have third-party software or hardware, for that matter, do you always get the code, audit it, and compile it yourself, the source code?
So we have we do risk assessments on all of the software and projects that we deploy. And those risk assessments include an inventory of the libraries that are included in the applications that we develop, as well as any defects associated with those libraries. The digital supply chain comes from all around the world. This microphone probably comes from many different countries around the world. And so the risks that are represented in the components that make up this piece of equipment need to be assessed. They need to be assessed for vulnerabilities that could allow adversarial groups to enter this piece of equipment or piece of software. And we make sure that when we deploy something, it goes through a rigorous risk assessment process where we evaluate things as much as possible.
The question at the core is, do you have access to the source code of what you're using? Whereas the risk assessment is, we don't need it in this case because we trust this company.
We ensure that we do audits on the organizations that provide source code to us. We certainly have access to some of the source code. We build some source code, and where we don't have access to the source code, we go through a rigorous risk assessment process with the company that provides it to us.
Very same story?
No, actually, we have proprietary, all of our high risk and transaction based systems are proprietary code bases. And proprietary code means we have a large development team that builds the code ourselves. We put it through quite rigorous security standards and vulnerability scanning. We have a managed detection and response and layered security protocols that are quite robust, and a private closed loop network. And so we do, of course, have the source code because we have a team that writes the source code, and we have very robust security layers, and we're constantly reviewing our security posture as well.
What does Interac know about a transaction? If I go to the store and I buy something, what do you know about the transaction?
I can share with the committee that all of the data meets the minimum required standards in order to process the transaction, and any personal identifiable information that is required to process the transaction to your bank account and not somebody else's bank account is fully secured.
And how about what the transaction is actually for?
Of course, the intended use and purpose of the transaction is in terms of like the merchant where it's being purchased.
You go to the gas station, you buy gas and a bar of chocolate. Does Interac know that you bought gas and a bar of chocolate, or that you went to the gas station?
I can't share all of the data elements that are collected, but I believe the transaction is about the money movement transaction itself. It's not about the goods and services that you're looking to purchase.
Yeah. Do you have, and this applies to both of you, member institutions that do a poor job of living up to your standards? I know in the case of payments, membership is statutorily required for some organizations. Interact's not the same thing, but do you have liger organizations that you're always chasing to say you're not keeping up with their standards? You don't have to identify them, but do they exist?
I would say all of the organizations that participate with Payments Canada have high security standards, and they all meet a very rigorous bar for safety and security.
Yeah, I would
say absolutely the same, but as the center of the ecosystem, Interact spends a good amount of time with all of our participants, and we have many more participants, in giving them lead time and testing time when we're raising security standards, which we always are, but we actively work with them to make sure they can make the new standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Canning, you actually have 3 minutes if you wish to use them.
Oh, I assumed that we. You caught me off guard here.
Well, I can go back to somebody else.
Okay.
Though, while
Sorry.
you're
Normally in
thinking
my
about
committee,
what-
I never get a
I'll
second
go back to
chance, so-
myself, which is what I'm interested in. So I've got my Visa card here with CIBC, and I've got my debit card. On a security basis only, I would be given to understand from your testimony, Ms. O'Brien, that this is far safer than this.
Yes, I would agree with that statement.
And why? Because you've got 300 organizations in this. You are a closed loop. There's many more thousands of organizations in this. So what is it? What is the essential? Oh. I've already been hacked on this. This one, she can't be hacked. She has no money anyway. Yeah, that's right. So what is it in the structure that makes this safer than this?
I think there's many factors, but I would share at Interact, as I alluded to earlier, we have a very strong governance and operating regulation structure that is layered. It's not just about the security of a closed loop network. It's about the participants' level of security, the issuers and acquirers, like the PIN pad level of security, as well as varying degrees of transaction types and limit structures, which is different than some of our credit card partners that we have in Canada that may have a higher risk appetite. They have different types of participants in their marketplaces and different types of fraud monitoring. So I can't speak to the level of fraud monitoring or their risk appetite. I just know that it's higher than ours in some regards, and their limits on certain different types of cards. As you may well know as a consumer, many cards have much higher limits. Those are more attractive targets for cybercrime than debit cards that
Not a function of how the system is set up or the security that's built into it. It's a function of how much risk we want to take in order to be able to do volumes of business.
I think it's a function of both.
Yeah.
It's a layered approach. It's a function of the security of the participants, of the operating regulations, of the limit structure, of the fraud risk monitoring for sure is pivotal and key in that ecosystem, and the limit structure, if I said that already.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
One other question with respect to the sharing that's going on among the various institutions. Not all institutions will have the same, I was going to say degree of interest. That's not quite right. They're all interested, but we'll have different agendas. Particularly the government will have one agenda, the security people have another agenda, the financial institutions have another agenda, and whoever else is in that. Are you satisfied that with the various agendas that are going on and you feeding in that data that security is actually enhanced at the end of the day?
I would say yes, absolutely. And it further enhances with every amount of information sharing that we have. Of course, we, participate, as Justin and Martin said, in a lot of central forums and information sharing through some committees. And the CCTX has been a great add in recent years. But the actual event sharing in the moment of a particular theme or threat vector that is in the marketplace at any given time is really pivotal to detecting it and preventing that fraud, and then it benefits the entire ecosystem. And so we at Interact will speak with individual financial institutions on a daily basis because those threat vectors continuously change. It's been quite effective.
I'm assuming Payments Canada would adopt the same answer. Is that correct? Okay. Final question with Payments Canada, and that is, I've never quite understood why when I'm paying a bill online, the money clearly comes out of my bank account, but is not credited to the vendor for a day or two or three. And it puzzles me that that's not an instantaneous transaction. Do you have an answer to that?
Yes. Not that we as an infrastructure layer don't interact with consumers at the bill payment level, but part of our modernization program includes the creation of a real-time payment rail, which would do exactly that, which is to eliminate the lag between deposits, check holds, and bill payments and the like. And so if you keep your fingers crossed, you'll see one coming soon.
Okay. I'll lay awake at night waiting for this to happen. So, Mr. Canning, then Mr. Aglinski.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up on what Mr. McKay was asking and comparing the credit card versus Interac model. I had MasterCard in my office last week telling me about their system, and as I recall, MasterCard or Visa is more of an intermediary between banks and vendors and individuals, whereas Interac, there's sort of a direct line into your bank account. And I'm just wondering if that adds more risk to a transaction, having that direct line into your bank account, whereas the other ones seem to be having more layers where security could kick in. Or maybe it's the other way around, but I just, I don't use Interac a lot, and it's not because of this. But I'm just curious as to this direct access to your bank account. What sort of security questions come into that?
I actually think it reduces risk to have the closed loop private network, and for clarity, the direct connection is it's called an API, or an application programming interface, that we have to the financial institution through which all transactions flow. So the sending institution, your bank, for example, would vet that you have the funds available, and then would send it real time across our payment infrastructure to the receiving institution, and we would be able to facilitate those transfers. The connection, the direct connection, I do believe reduces risk.
And
we can monitor and manage the system appropriately.
Mr. McKay also mentioned bill payments, for instance. Is that a similar, when I'm paying a bill, Interac, I don't think is involved, but when I'm paying a bill through my bank, is it a similar?
Interac does do some of those transactions, and we're looking at it, and certainly e-transfer is an easy one to understand. If you're paying, your a service provider or a plumber in your home, you may choose to use Interac e-transfer, and those are real-time payments today. The bill payment interface that you may say Rogers Cable, to pay your cable bill as an example. Today, those payments are held at the financial institutions and then remitted through a batch process. And so we're actively working with them on how to make those payments real-time, because we have real-time capabilities already. But today, those are batch process payments at each of the Canadian financial institutions. It's just a legacy thing.
Mr. Aglinski.
Thank you. And to Interact, earlier you stated that you kept all your stuff within Canadian servers and stuff like that, but you do provide international service to foreign cardholders. Is that correct?
We do have some international remittance on our Interac debit product, wherein if I think somebody had an example, if you were in the United States and you wanted to withdraw money through your Interac ATM bank card, you could use a third-party ATM. And so we do have an ability for you to withdraw funds when you're in another country.
But someone from a foreign country cannot use your system. And do you maintain a relationship with foreign banks in such a case?
No, we do not maintain foreign banking relationships. If you, as a Canadian consumer with a Canadian bank account, chooses to withdraw funds, if you're visiting Texas, for example, you can withdraw funds in Texas through your Interac debit card. But no, we do not maintain foreign banking relationships.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering about security.
Sure.
Turn over, my friend had a question for you. Thank you.
Merci, Jim. J'étais absent.
Thank you, Jim. I was away for a few minutes, so I'm not sure if the question was already asked. But if we're talking about threats to the system, and either one of the witnesses can answer, how many direct attacks are there on the system per day or per month? And then, can you tell us where these attacks are coming from? Are they individuals? Are they people in Canada? People from elsewhere in the world, or even a country?
We don't describe the details of our specific security capabilities or security incidents or events. Suffice it to say, the financial industry receives attacks all the time from everywhere.
Mais est-ce qu'on peut, sans avoir le détail,
But without getting into the details of your organizations, could you at least tell me what type of attacks you're sustaining? Is it more about isolated individuals, or are they more organizational in nature, these attacks?
In between attempts and attacks. So I would say all financial institutions or payment ecosystem providers and settlements providers are going to sustain attempts. You know, what we do at Interac is we have a managed detection and response. And so when there's an attempt to infiltrate our systems, we can see it, we're actively monitoring it, and we're preventing it to make sure that it doesn't happen. I'd say attacks are relatively few, but what I do know of them from some of our partners and through some of these forums where they're reported, in recent years, they are sophisticated. I don't think we're seeing a lot of the one-off like you described, that they are more sophisticated attempts that are coming through.
Mm-hmm. Est-ce que vous avez une obligation?
Do you have an obligation to disclose things to the banks? Since you're the intermediary amongst the various banks, if there are bigger threats, do you have an obligation to disclose such attempts or attacks to the banks? I know that I don't think governments have an obligation to disclose, but for your own business partners, do you have an obligation to disclose attacks?
We don't have an obligation to disclose amongst the various financial institutions. That's not a legislative requirement, but I will share that, we do have trusted channels through which we do share some of that information for the betterment and safety and soundness of the ecosystem. And so we will share information on a very specific basis with the related FI.
Parler de
You were clear in talking about sophisticated operations, so that requires quite a bit of resources. Can you give us a sense of where these attacks are coming from or these threats?
I think the RCMP or perhaps, your the new cyber unit is probably best placed to pinpoint where in the world that they're coming from. There are certainly various countries where we have seen attempts and attacks come from, but it does migrate. It migrates around. It is global and it is sophisticated.
Merci, Monsieur Paulus.
I'm sorry, Mr. Paulus, but your time is up.
England.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you for being with us. I want to pick up where my colleague, Monsieur Paulus, left off. I also serve on the Standing Committee for National Defence, and this is one of those areas where when we talk about critical infrastructure, there's some overlap. Without getting into the details, as you pointed out, or giving us information that should not be disclosed, how concerned are you, generally speaking, about a state-to-state attack, and how much do you consider yourselves to be part of our core infrastructure? And then maybe added onto that question is what if your service does go down for a prolonged period through an attack? What would be the implications for the country?
So we first of all, as you've heard, we are safe. Security is our most important priority. We support our members, the financial institutions in Canada, in their security programs, and they support us in ours. Attacks and threats come from all sides, and we must maintain a constant state of vigilance, and our members must do so as well. And we rely on every Canadian citizen to be responsible for their own security. And we also believe that together we can improve and increase the security of the country as a whole.
Are you in any capacity at all working with analysts or staff of the Department of National Defense in protecting yourselves? Is there collaboration on such issues as AI, quantum, things that would affect other parts of our critical infrastructure as well if they came at us?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you able to elaborate in a bit more detail?
No.
Okay. Are sufficient funding levels in place in your assessment to do that kind of work? And if there are trajectories where we need to invest more, what be it talent, be it structural work, be it thinking about it differently as we go into AI and those kinds of questions?
We're very confident with what we have now, and there is always opportunity and need to continue to invest and improve. So we are very confident and feel as though we have been responding well, as have our partners in government and elsewhere. And there are also needs that emerge as we go. As you've heard, that the bar is always rising, so the need to continue investment and potentially grow investment is there.
Is the degree of centralization of the clearance system that we see in Canada typical of other, let's say, developed democracies, G7, Five Eyes? Or is there an argument to decentralize the clearing system so that any given attack will be able to do less damage if successful?
Our central clearing system is very similar to other G7s and other advanced financial infrastructures. And we are always looking at what opportunities there are to continue to strengthen the security. We're confident in the position we have right now, and we will always be looking, and we've done a lot of research which has been public on distributed ledgers and their application. The low surface area, the high trust between parties is a factor which diminishes the need for a distributed ledger of some kind or some other new technology in that way. But we're always looking at it and invest in that innovation.
That's very helpful. Thanks very much. Final question I have is just strictly a personal interest question. What percentage of transactions, consumer transactions in Canada, in your estimation, is done on a non-electronic, i.e. cash basis? And what kind of trend lines do we see? Is that data that you have?
Well, we publish a report every year called Methods and Trends, which refers to that, and you will see cash diminishing, and we've believed that it will continue to decline, but it will never go away. And it's below 50% now and declining at a rate of somewhere between 5 and 7% a year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Well, I must be in the declining minority then. One of Mr. Picard or Mr. Graham. Yeah.
Okay.
The three of us.
I can withdraw money from a ATM machine in Paris and London, can I? Interact. I can withdraw money from an ATM machine in London or Paris.
I think in Europe there are some restrictions, but yes, there are certainly ATMs that you could withdraw money from in Paris.
Can I withdraw money from St. Petersburg and Moscow?
No, that would violate sanctions rules.
So there's nothing available from the Russian side using my card, my Interact card. There's no. It's
No,
possible.
we would absolutely adhere to all of the sanctions rules in Canada.
Okay, I'm done.
That's quick.
I want to build on a question from Mr. Bruce earlier on checks and perhaps the obsolescence of the check as we know it. Is it time to dump account numbers, addresses, signatures on our checks and switch to, I don't know if we can have a paper version of a token, but if there's any way of doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're innovating on new payments transmission technologies every day. The check continues. I would say mostly in the small business space, a little bit in the retail consumer space, but not as much. But there's really no need for a paper check anymore.
We would say that at the consumer level, we're seeing a rapid decline. There are still some people who rely on it, and there are some circumstances where that's the only method of payment that is going to work for a host of reasons. Where we see the biggest need is in the small business area, and usually it's for managing information, because currently information doesn't flow cleanly across the system in terms of from all the notations, and I get a copy of the check so I can see it. So until we can rectify or remedy that, we see a strong hold on checks. And so we're making a number of moves to improve the information that travels with payments by publishing standards. One of the most current and global standards for information is the ISO 20022, 202 standard, which includes vast amounts of information to travel with your payment, which would allow a small business person to see more, including invoice and all kinds of other information that goes with that. So our expectation is the decline of the check will come with the introduction of a more robust information to travel with the payment.
On the checks themselves, I'll ask you about the checks will continue to exist. Are you going to de-information that piece of paper?
No, we're going to replace it.
Completely. Okay. You said that's quelque chose d'autre?
Yeah.
Was it?
Back in Russia.
The Russians are coming.
I guess parties of your transaction, I guess it might be a bit complicated to know every member of your group. When I withdraw money in Europe, those banks are part of your network somehow. I don't know how it works. Is it possible, do you know, or is it possible to know whether banks outside Russia, but in Europe, but elsewhere, that may be owned by Russian interests are part of your network?
They're definitely not a part of our network, and I'd say the financial ecosystem in Canada has gotten quite mature and robust in our sanctions screening and in understanding, transfer agencies and those types of things. So we definitely secure the network. We do very little or very few transactions outside of Canada. So it's not a problem that we encounter or that we see.
Okay, now I'm done.
Okay.
Okay. Let me first of all ask Mr. Oglinski, do you want to ask any further questions?
I think I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Mr. Paulus?
Merci.
Thank you. We met with MasterCard representatives, and they have what they call red teams. In French, they're called ethical pirates or white hats. I'm not sure what you're hearing from the interpretation, but people who work internally and who try to break into the system to see if there's any, to identify gaps or weaknesses. Do you have things like that in your system?
A very robust IT security team that uses a number of tools that allow us to proactively scan the system for vulnerabilities and look at our managed detection and response capabilities as well. But we scan our systems on a daily basis and keep quite current.
Vous avez des équipes IT internes, là, vous faites...
So you have internal verifications, but you don't hire people, such people who are hackers or white hat hackers, as they call them, to try to identify the vulnerabilities in your system?
A very large IT security team. We don't call them white hat hackers. We call them IT security. And so we have a large IT security team that's constantly testing. We call it penetration testing and scanning the system. I think it's fundamentally the same. Red team or white hat hackers is a bit of a buzzword these days.
I can answer for Payments Canada, and as you can appreciate, we don't speak specifics about the techniques that we use, but we're well aware of those techniques as well as other ones, and we employ those that are most suited for ensuring the safety and security of the system.
Et en terminant, pour moi,
Closing, in my case, our system is looking at the banking system and cybersecurity. So as partners of the banking system, where do you think the main vulnerability is in terms of cybersecurity, or the largest breach?
I would say we see two vulnerabilities that I spoke to earlier in my remarks. I mean, one is a lack of ability of government, RCMP, and law enforcement to openly share information because the criminal activity changes quickly, and it is a real-time fraudulent environment. And so the ability to access that information more quickly would enable us to have stronger defenses than we do already today. That's one vulnerability. And then the other one I would say is public education, that you all seem quite aware of, that really public education on the, what they should and should not do would go a long way to securing the system and the ecosystem.
We would say that it's an ecosystem.
Thank you.
In it and of varying degrees of capability and risk. We know that we are stronger when we work together, and that the answer to identifying vulnerabilities is to work together in identifying those and to each play our part in resolving it and to managing it. And that's where we put our time and effort, and we believe that our other counterparts do as well. And so we support our members and anybody in the financial institution in that coordination, and we're confident that that's the best strategy.
That's it. I think Mr. Spingaman and then Mr. Graham are going to share.
Thank you, Mr.
5
Chair.
minutes.
Just really just one brief question. And again, I fully appreciate the levels of confidentiality that you need to preserve, but is there, in the minds of this committee or in the minds of the Canadian public, we sometimes get the perception that there's a qualitative difference between a state-led, state-directed, or state-owned attack and what comes out of the private sector and or the underground world. Is there an appreciable difference qualitatively in those attacks? Does a nation state have greater capacity to do us harm, or is that misplaced in the sense that if you're fighting effectively against attacks that come out of the quote-unquote private sector, you're as equipped to fight off a state-led attack or a series of attacks, coordinated attacks? Yeah.
So certainly nation states have more resources than most criminal organizations, but unfortunately we've seen that some exploits that have been leaked from nation states have ended up in the hands of criminal actors. And so that creates a threat environment that's constantly changing and evolving. And while we monitor these things and we focus on the safety of the national payment system, we recognize that continued investment and focus is required to address all of these threats.
Both fronts equally. And if you do it well, you're able to stave off, no matter where they come from.
Correct.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
So just to build on that a little bit, the intent of a state actor in the financial system would not be to take the money. That's not their purpose, right? It's to see who's trading money with who, to get the metadata, as we like to talk about, and be in a position to undermine the system when they push a button if they need to. Would that be a correct an accurate assessment of state actors in the system?
I would say there are a number of motivations for various state actors. We've seen in the past that some state actors use financial systems to get around sanctions. Some state actors are motivated for other reasons. So there's a whole myriad of reasons for any threat against the financial system, and we need to be aware of all of those reasons and take proactive and countermeasures against those threats.
So if a state actor wanted to take down our banking system, are they setting themselves up to be in a position to do that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If a foreign country wanted to undermine our financial structure, their intention would not be to take data, it would be to shut down our system. I assume that we're doing our utmost to prevent that from happening as well.
We would not be specific on any incident that we're aware of, and we assure you that we do think about that and do take action to prevent that, and that our colleagues in other organizations around us do the same, that this is not an unknown for us or something we're not aware of. We're very clearly focused on that.
Yeah, and I would add our respective resiliency programs are absolutely, I mean, I can only speak for Interact, but we're at 99.9% uptime. You can only achieve that uptime if you have a resiliency strategy that includes, very robust infrastructure to deliver on that, even during times of degradation of service or as any attack that may attempt to disrupt the service.
Yeah. On another topic, EMV stands for, I forget what the E is, but M is MasterCard and V is Visa, right? Is that correct? In the EMV technology?
The acronym's been around for a decade or so now, so it's pardon?
It's a music store.
Yeah.
HMV, that's a different thing. Okay, but anyway, my question though is there a qualitative difference between the credit card and debit card systems in anything we're talking about? What are the differences between the two networks and systems, and does one have an advantage over the other? Not that you have a biased position.
Well, I spoke to this a little bit earlier around, I can only speak to our, closed loop network that we have, but that we really have a layered security strategy and fraud monitoring and robust security and risk strategy. It's multiple different controls and security standards that we have on our network. The MasterCard and Visa networks are based out of the US largely, and then operate on a global basis. And so they have a different set of standards that they're going to meet, and a different layered security structure that they're required to meet, and a different risk appetite. So I can't speak as much to theirs. I can only speak to the safety and soundness that ours provides to Canadians.
Graham, and just before I let you go, Wayne Gretzky has famously said, you don't comment, you don't talk about where the puck is, you talk about where the puck is going. And one of the big developments in your industry is Apple, Amazon, and various others. Would either one of you allow Apple into your systems?
Well, I can share from an Interact perspective, we were first to market with Apple in putting an Interact debit card in the Apple Wallet. That was the TSP technology that we spoke about earlier. We also have the same Interact debit card in the Google Wallet and the Samsung Wallet. Canadians do want to be able to tap their phones in the same way that they tap their cards. And so we have found the tokenization of that data, so the abstraction and tokenization of that data, to be extremely secure and to be a really good security protocol. And leveraging the EMV technology has created a really secure product that has very little fraud associated with it.
So Canadian consumers using any one of those lines can be as secure as a direct use of a bank product, then a Canadian bank product.
It's akin to direct use of your Interact debit card.
Payments?
And we don't interact at the point of sale, or would have no reason to interact with Apple as a payment provider. Our staff would likely use it. It's not something that's in our systems or anything. It's not a point of interaction for us.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And again, I want to thank you for your patience. We have stressed your patience, and it is what it is. And thank you for very interesting and useful testimony.
Well, thank you for
With
having
that,
us.
we're adjourned.